The Umbrella Academy is a fantastic show, adapted from graphic novels written by Jersey's own Gerard Way of My Chemical Romance. In this video, we're going to break down Season 1. Reginald Hargreaves' wife was sick, and his planet was dying. He traveled off-planet and snuck his way into American society in 1928, and he bought an umbrella shop. 6 decades later, on the 12th hour of the first day of October 1989, 43 women around the world gave birth. This was unusual only in the fact that none of these women had been pregnant when the day first began. So Reginald Hargreaves, eccentric billionaire and adventurer, resolved to locate and adopt as many of the children as possible. He got 7 of them. The kids all had special powers. Luther was strong. Diego could bend the path of things such as knives. Allison could manipulate people through lies.
I heard a rumor that you shot your friend.
Klaus could speak to the dead. Ben could transform into a giant octopus of sorts. Number 5 had the ability to travel through space and time. And last but not least, Vanya could manifest destructive waves through her vibrations. Vanya killed her nanny, then another and another. That is why Hargreaves created Grace. Vanya smashed Grace, but Grace didn't die. Vanya even began to eat her oatmeal. But Vanya's power eventually scared Hargreaves too much, so he locked her up in a soundproof room. Hargreaves told the other kids that Vanya was sick and had to be isolated. He gave Vanya medication, and worst of all, Hargreaves had Allison use her rumor power to convince Vanya that she was just ordinary. So the other 6 kids formed the inaugural class of the Umbrella Academy. When they went on missions, Hargreaves held Vanya back, telling her that she was not special. When the 6 kids got their Umbrella Academy tattoos, Vanya drew one of her own. So Vanya felt different. She felt alone, and she was not the only one. The Umbrella Academy became famous and gained a lot of fans. One of those fans was a boy named Harold Jenkins. Harold Jenkins had been born on the same day as the kids in the Umbrella Academy, so Harold dreamed of being special, and he asked Hargreaves if he could join them. Unfortunately, Hargreaves shunned Harold very rudely. Harold took out his anger on his abusive father. He killed him and spent 12 years in prison. During that time, Harold Jenkins dreamed of getting revenge against Hargreaves and the Umbrella Academy. And while Harold was in prison, a lot happened. Hargreaves had warned Number 5 about traveling through time.
A spatial jump is trivial when compared with the unknowns of time travel.
But Number 5 did it anyway. Number 5 accidentally jumped forward to the aftermath of the apocalypse. He was unable to return, and thus he was stuck in the future for around 45 years. Then Ben died. So, as the Umbrella Academy grew up, their team went from 6 to 5 to 4. Hargreaves locked Klaus in a dark room in an attempt to get Klaus to control his powers. But seeing the dead was very traumatic. Klaus eventually found out that his ability only worked when he was sober. So, he became an addict. Diego left the Umbrella Academy when he was 17 years old. He joined the police academy where he met Detective Eudora Patch. When Diego was thrown out of the police academy, he continued to fight crime on his own. Allison used her rumor ability to become a star. She also used her ability to make Patrick love her. They got married and had a daughter named Claire. Unfortunately, Patrick caught Allison using her ability on Claire, so he filed for divorce and got custody of their daughter. 7 years prior to the current timeline, Luther was the only one left. He was severely injured on a mission, so Hargreaves injected him with the Pogo serum. The serum saved Luther's life, but it transformed him into a beast. Later, Hargreaves sent Luther to the moon where Luther collected samples for 4 years. Meanwhile, 5 years prior to the current timeline, Vanya wrote and published an autobiography called Extraordinary: My Life as Number 7. In that autobiography, she gave up family secrets, and as a result, some of her siblings hated her for it, most notably Diego. So the Umbrella Academy was split up physically as well as emotionally. And that was a major problem. Hargreaves knew about the upcoming apocalypse. He had prepared the kids to deal with it, but they had to do it together. In other words, Hargreaves needed to find a way to bring the kids back together. Klaus got hit in the head and entered an alternate dimension, maybe heaven. While he was there, he spoke to Hargreaves. Hargreaves told Klaus that he had killed himself so as to bring the kids back together. Klaus told this to his siblings, and Pogo confirmed it to be true. So, 16 years, 4 months, and 4 days after Number 5 had disappeared, the kids all went back home for a memorial service. While in the future, Number 5 met a woman called the Handler. She told him that she worked for an organization called the Commission. They were tasked with the preservation of the time continuum. The handler recruited number 5 to work for her, and he did just so, until he didn't. Number 5 was on a mission to kill Kennedy, but number 5 decided to break his contract when he suddenly figured out how to get home so as to stop the apocalypse. So number 5 finally returned to the current timeline. For better and worse, he miscalculated. So he returned to the current timeline in his 13-year-old body. In essence, he was a 58-year-old in a 13-year-old body. Number 5 told Vanya that he didn't find out what had destroyed the world, but he did find out what day it happened.
The world ends in 8 days. I have no idea how to stop it.
Number 5 also had a prosthetic eye, so he tried to figure out who it belonged to. Little did he know that eye belonged to Harold Jenkins. When Harold Jenkins got out of jail for having killed his father, he took on a new identity, Leonard Peabody. Leonard spied on the Umbrella Academy and saw Klaus throw away a very important book. Inside that book, Leonard read about Vanya's ability, how Vanya's ability was linked to her emotions. Leonard hired Vanya to be his violin instructor, and he was pretty bad, but the two of them hit it off. He secretly killed the first chair, which opened up the spot for Vanya. She auditioned and earned the spot. Leonard pretended to be happy for her, and Vanya felt as if someone believed in her for the first time. When she got home, her siblings told her that they were discussing a family matter. Since she hadn't been invited, she felt left out as usual. Outside, she unintentionally twisted the street lamps. Leonard pointed it out, but Vanya doubted that it was her. They went to his grandmother's cabin and he tried to help her access her ability. It didn't work, so he came up with a different plan. Since Vanya's ability was tied to her emotions, Leonard hired 3 men to beat him up. When this happened, Vanya exploded in rage. 2 of the 3 men died, and Leonard lost his eye. So that's one mystery answered. The prosthetic eye that number 5 found in the future belonged to Leonard Peabody, otherwise known as Harold Jenkins. After they left the hospital, Harold and Vanya went back out into the woods. This time, she figured out how to access her ability. Vanya was able to access her ability by focusing on a single sound around her, a vibration. When Vanya went inside, the door slammed. That sound reminded her of getting locked up as a child. So Vanya had regained her ability, and she had also regained her memory as to how her ability had been repressed as a child. Meanwhile, Vanya's siblings had found out that Leonard Peabody was actually Harold Jenkins, so they went to his house and found his creepy attic. Since Harold wasn't there, they decided to go check out his grandmother's house. Unfortunately, Diego was arrested, so Allison drove to Harold's grandmother's house alone. When she got there, she told Vanya the truth about Leonard, that he was actually a convicted murderer named Harold Jenkins. Unfortunately, Vanya had just remembered her past, how Hargreaves had locked her in the soundproof room, how Allison had used her ability on Vanya to make Vanya believe that Vanya was ordinary. So Vanya was very, very angry. When she threatened Allison, Allison attempted to use her ability on Vanya again, but she was too slow. Vanya sliced Allison's neck with a wave of air. Vanya was horrified, but Harold was very excited since he is a psycho. The two of them left before her brothers arrived. When Vanya's brothers arrived, they found Allison and brought her home. Thankfully, their mother was able to stitch her up and Allison survived. Harold took Vanya back to his home, but she found her father's book in his stuff and called him out on it. Harold tried to convince Vanya to stay with him, but she wanted to go home because she loved Allison and her family. Harold got mad. He started banging the book and called her ordinary over and over. Vanya freaked out and killed him. Number 5, Diego and Klaus found Harold's body, so number 5 finally realized whom the prosthetic eye belonged to. More importantly, since number 5 had intercepted a contract to protect Harold Jenkins a few days earlier, number 5 foolishly assumed that they had stopped the apocalypse since Harold was dead, but they had not. When Allison woke up, she could not speak, but she wrote a note to Luther, Vanya Powers. Pogo explained what that meant, so when Vanya went back home, Luther squeezed her unconscious. Then he locked her up in the soundproof room again. That was the start of the end. Vanya's pain and loneliness grew and grew. Her heartbeat sped up, and she exploded in power and escaped the soundproof room. As Vanya walked through her home, she thought about the past, how her siblings had alienated her. Her anger manifested, destroying room after room. While escaping the house, Ben reached down and pulled Diego aside. That meant that Klaus had reached a new level with his ability. Klaus had learned to pull Ben back into the physical realm. Pogo distracted Vanya, allowing Luther to escape with Allison. Then, Pogo admitted the truth, that he knew what Hargreaves had done to her. As a result, Vanya killed Pogo. She brought down the entire house with Mother inside. Afterwards, Number 5 realized that Harold Jenkins hadn't been the cause of the apocalypse. He had been the fuse, and Vanya was the bomb. In order to protect the time continuum, the handler told Cha-Cha and Hazel to protect Vanya, so they tailed Vanya, but Hazel ditched Cha-Cha so that he could go back to his room and save Agnes from the handler. Vanya's concert began, and she played beautifully. Allison told her brothers to let her go in alone, and she did just so. She smiled, and Vanya smiled back. Unfortunately, her protective brothers pulled an audible. They charged Vanya. Vanya rebuffed them, and her beautiful song changed tune. Meanwhile, commission agents overwhelmed the Umbrella Academy until Klaus's new powers allowed Ben to do his thing. Vanya transformed into the white violin and trapped her 4 brothers. But Allison walked up to Vanya from behind and shot next to her head. The sound of the gunshot messed with Vanya's mind, so she dropped her brothers, but her beam accidentally shot up and exploded the moon, causing the apocalypse. Before the world exploded, Number 5 teleported all of them to another time and place. Everyone, including Vanya. After all, unless they fixed Vanya, the apocalypse would always happen. And so, on April the 1st, 2019, the Earth was destroyed in a cataclysmic event. Billions of people were wiped out in a matter of minutes. Ironically, the 6 survivors of the apocalypse were the very siblings who brought it on.